One of my most anticipated movies of the year, Luca Guadagnino's Bones and All, is coming to theaters in a couple of months, but I was able to see it at the New York Film Festival. Is this movie worth the hype? Let's talk about it. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. I've seen a few movies from the New York Film Festival. We're going to talk about them over the next couple of weeks, but today's movie is an email. First poster for the Super Mario movie. That's what interrupted this video, really? Bones and All is a fascinating story. Like I said, directed by Luca Guadagnino and starring Taylor Russell, Timothée Chalamet. It's all about a story of first love between Marin, a young woman learning how to survive on the margins of society, and Lee, an intense and disenfranchised drifter, as they meet and join together for a 1,000-mile odyssey, which takes them through the back roads, hidden passages, and trap doors of Ronald Reagan's America. All roads lead back to their terrifying pasts to a final stand that will determine whether or not their love can survive their otherness. What is that otherness, you ask? We'll talk about it because it is not a spoiler. People are aware of what this movie is about, but the rating here is rated R. Strong, bloody content, brief graphic nudity, some sexual content, language, and some scenes that will 100% make you either terrified or really uncomfortable. That is where it starts to lean into the horror genre. So this is the type of movie that I was really excited about because Luca is the type of director to bring us a stylistic or an artistic take on a concept like this, but also keep it grounded. As wild as this premise actually is, because of what these two main characters are, the film still feels like something that could have actually happened, and I say could have because the movie takes place in the 80s. It captures the time period oh so well. It also travels to different locations in the United States, one being Kentucky. Howdy, y'all. Why is my dog barking? The cinematography is incredible, and instead of diving into the story first, I want to talk about the technical elements because they are truly fantastic from top to bottom. The visual effects, and not even leaning heavy into CGI. We're talking practical. We're talking the gruesomeness of what our main characters are doing to other people's bodies. That is captured in a way that is going to unnerve so many people, because while the movie has a very distinct style to it, which I appreciate, those scenes are not stylized whatsoever. When we see blood and guts and that type of gore, not presented in as much of a horror way, or really a scary way, even though it in itself is horrifying, we normally get something crazy like Quentin Tarantino or James Wan, something with a lot of pizzazz, right? And I like pizzazz, but what Luca does with this movie, he keeps it all grounded. We get prolonged scenes where characters are just sitting and eating other people. If you didn't know this was a cannibal movie, now you do. But those are the moments where I was feeling super uncomfortable, not only because of the way it was presented script-wise, but because of those effects that make you want to look away. They look so realistic visually. That was stunning. And the camera movements and the score. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I believe they're working on another movie this year. I think it's Empire of Light. It's going to be hard to match what they did in this film. And looking at this movie from an Oscar perspective, I could see cinematography. I could see, even special effects. If they want to look at it in that way, may not have a huge chance compared to these other big blockbuster films. But score-wise, yeah, right now they're going to be in my 5 in terms of predicting a nomination. It's fantastic. The acoustic guitar and how it slightly changes with every location that they travel to. And I say travel to because our two main characters, coming from their tragic pasts in their own way, they're on this, it says 1,000-mile road trip in the description. They're on this journey to not only find themselves, to find each other, but also to understand who they truly are and what the point of all of this is, what the meaning is behind the urge that they have to eat others. See, our main two characters are facing this ethical dilemma of, we know this is something that we have to do. We feel it in our bones. And that is something that is prominent all throughout the movie. But there's also the idea of, is what we're doing wrong if we focus on certain people, if we just accept the fact that this urge is uncontrollable? Are there more people out there like us? And this is a film, and, you know, Obviously, I can't dive into all the details because that becomes spoilers, but just looking at it from a surface level perspective, you can draw comparisons to kind of what they're going through and the metaphor of having to hide themselves and, not knowing if this is something that other people can handle. And those are very clear metaphors for me, especially in this time period in the 80s to what people have had to go through with different instances, of course, but that idea of the disenfranchised, and Lucas said this in a statement made that I was able to read after seeing this film. He says, there's something about people living in the margins of society that I'm drawn toward and touched by. And that's what this movie is about. It's about the outcasts, those that feel as if they can't truly be themselves, mostly because what they are doing is extremely wrong, and those morality questions are slightly raised in this movie. If I have one major complaint about that, it's the fact that the film didn't necessarily dive deep enough into that moral dilemma. It takes place in this movie, and we see it affecting our characters, but it leans more into kind of the romance aspect of it all, the idea that love will get us through this if we love each other, if we love ourselves. And that's fine, but how about the moral questions that are raised from what they are actually doing and what these urges entail, regardless of who they are doing it to? There are so many things about that I wish this movie would have tackled a bit better. And even looking at our main two characters, I could see more so Timothée Chalamet's character and kind of his mindset, but Taylor Russell's character, as amazing as the performance is, I'm still not entirely sure where she falls on that entire thing. And this is after being able to think about this movie for multiple days. So I wish the film would have tackled that just a bit more. I kept waiting for it. I never got it. But the actual road trip and what we get from that, the surprises along the way, is super entertaining. There's actually a nice sense of humor about this film. I thought it was going to be really dramatic and extremely unnerving throughout. And those scenes are there. But those scenes are also kind of lighthearted when you're sitting there all uncomfortable and there's people, kind of eating other people, won't say who, what, or when. Yeah, you're going to feel that, but they also kind of bring out the humor from those moments. And I think the best example of that is what they did with Mark Rylance and his character. This performance is so good. I could see a potential Oscar nomination because it's so outlandish and wild, and just the movie itself, I don't know if we're going to get it, but Rylance is incredible. The clothing that he is wearing, what he says, what he spouts out, and then what his character continues to do throughout the film was not only surprising, but it was also just more opportunities to show what he was doing in terms of his performance. It was incredible. Michael Stuhlbarg doesn't get a lot of time in this movie, but it's one of those roles. You see it and you're kind of like, is that, oh my God? That's Michael Stuhlbarg. And the reaction from the press screening that I was in was fantastic. Maybe the best of the entire day. It was great. But the main two characters, Timothée Chalamet, who plays Lee, Chalamet's really good in this movie, as he always is. He's more of the loner or outcast type. He's been doing what he's doing in the film a lot longer than Taylor Russell's Marin. But once they meet up, she's able to kind of learn from him to kind of feed off of what... Feed off. It's the first pun of the day, hopefully the only one. And the relationship between them, it's intense. Of course, it's a romance. It's also a drama. It's a slight horror film. There are comedic bits. It's a movie that you can appreciate because it kind of spans numerous genres and it balances it quite nicely, and the pacing is quite good. But if we're talking about all of those performances I just mentioned, as good as Chalamet was, Taylor Russell is the best that she's ever been. Taylor Russell stole the well, maybe Rylance stole the movie, but Taylor Russell is the lead of note here, and I believe she actually outdoes Chalamet and that performance. She's phenomenal. She not only is able to kind of fall into that role of a character that's, 10 years younger than she is in real life, but you feel her kind of reeling from her past and the fallout with her family and moving on with her life and being able to tell where things could go wrong, where things will go wrong. There is a backstory within the backstory of her character that we do spend some time on in the third act, and personally, I felt as if it wasn't a waste of time, but that's yet another story that I just didn't get enough out of. But just looking at her performance, It's not one I see getting an Oscar nomination, but again, personally, I think she's nomination worthy. So this movie is too long, but it's not too long. That seems like a lazy criticism. I don't have a pacing problem, even though the pacing is slow. I think that worked extremely well for what this film was going for. What I have a problem with is the fact that it feels like it ends and then it just keeps going. The finale, really the last 20 minutes, the film kind of meanders. We thought we were done with a specific storyline, but that comes back into play, and I just felt that was unnecessary, right? Now, the ending itself, the final few shots, was beautiful, and I'm glad we got there, but it's the way we get there from when I first thought the movie ended to that point that I just wasn't a huge fan of. I like what they did with some of the performances there, and the direction is still really good. It's great throughout the entire film, but I was sitting there kind of like, oh, well, it just didn't feel super necessary. Regardless, the experience as a whole was one that I won't forget because it's just such a different movie. It's such an uncomfortable movie compared to anything I watched, but that's definitely what they were going for. They captured it. Before I give you my score, hey, if you're still here and you enjoyed this review, dropping a like down below would help this channel, it helps the algorithm, but also leave those comments. Are you excited for this film? Bones and All is a fascinating experience. Chalamet eats up his screen time, but this is Taylor Russell's time to shine. She is phenomenal, and their chemistry is top tier. The film thrives on a visual level, but occasionally stumbles with its story. Mesmerizing and terrifying. I'm going with a 73%. You may have expected a higher score from me, but that's still a good score for what is a good movie. I just felt one or two things about the story didn't quite come together. Regardless, this is one you have to watch. This is one you cannot miss when it comes to the theater. Go out and devour it.